The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the sheer curtains of the bedroom. In the dim light, she lay on the bed, her long hair cascading around her shoulders. The day had been long and filled with responsibilities, and she finally had a moment to unwind. The soft hum of the evening settled around her, creating a sense of tranquility that she craved. Meanwhile, footsteps echoed softly down the hallway. He had just returned from a late afternoon run, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. As he approached her room, he spotted the door slightly ajar. Curiosity tugged at him and he pushed it open gently. The sight before him caught him off guard. His stepmother, clad in a simple tank top and shorts, playing with a satisfying tool, moaning and in key speed of tool to satisfy her desires. Her beauty was undeniable, even in the soft fading light. He felt a rush of warmth flood through him, an unfamiliar flutter in his chest. He quickly averted his gaze, unsure if he should intrude upon her solitude. "Hey, are you okay?" he called out softly, his voice barely above a whisper. She opened her eyes, momentarily surprised. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in," she replied, a hint of color rising to her cheeks as she realized how she must look. He stepped further into the room, unable to help but admire her. "I thought I'd check on you," he said, trying to keep his tone casual, though he could feel his heart racing. "That's sweet of you," she smiled, hiding the tool beside her. "Come sit with me for a moment." He hesitated but then moved closer, taking a seat at the edge of the bed. They exchanged pleasantries and she felt ashamed and shy, but there was an unspoken tension in the air, an electric current that neither could ignore. "You know," she began, her voice softening, "I'm really glad we've gotten closer since everything changed." He nodded, feeling the weight of her words. It had been a transition for them both, adjusting to their new family dynamic. "Yeah, it's nice. I never thought we would bond like this," he admitted, his gaze lingering on her face. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Sometimes, it's the unexpected relationships that become the most meaningful." As they talked, she leaned back on the bed, her arms stretching above her head, inadvertently showcasing her toned figure. He swallowed hard, feeling a heat rise in his cheeks. "Do you ever think about how strange life can be?" she asked, her voice contemplative. "All the time," he replied, a playful smirk appearing on his face. "Like how I used to think you were just my stepmom and now you feel like more than that." She raised an eyebrow, a teasing smile playing on her lips. "More than just a stepmom? How so?" He hesitated, weighing his words carefully. "I don't know. You're just easy to talk to and you make me feel understood." Her expression softened and for a moment, they shared a lingering gaze that felt charged with something deeper. "You're easy to talk to as well," she said quietly. "I've always appreciated that about you." Just then the silence between them stretched, the air thick with tension. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he caught her looking at him in a way that sent a thrill through him. "Can I ask you something?" he finally blurted out, his voice low. "Of course," she replied, propping herself up on her elbows, curiosity dancing in her eyes. "What do you really think about me?" he asked, the question hanging heavily in the air. She paused, considering her answer. "I think you're an incredible young man. You're smart, kind, and you've grown so much. I admire that." His breath hitched in his throat as he processed her words. "And do you ever think about what it would be like if things were different?" She looked taken aback, a hint of surprise flashing across her features. "What do you mean?" "You know, if we weren't stepmother and stepson," he ventured cautiously, the heat of vulnerability creeping up his neck. A moment of silence stretched between them, the weight of unspoken desires lingering in the air. She studied him, her expression shifting as if she was contemplating something profound. "You're young," she said softly, "but there's a part of me that understands where you're coming from." His heart raced at her admission, emboldened by her honesty. "So you do think about it?" He pressed gently. She bit her lip, hesitating. "I think it's natural to feel a connection with someone you spend time with, especially in such a unique situation." He nodded slowly, feeling a rush of hope. "I just can't help but feel that there's something more between us." With a delicate smile, she shifted closer, their knees almost touching. "But we have to be careful," she reminded him, her gaze locked onto his. "This could change everything." "I know," he said, his pulse quickening. But sometimes the best things in life come from taking risks. As if drawn together by an invisible force, she closed the gap between them, her lips brushing against his in a tentative kiss. It was soft and tentative, a spark igniting between them that felt both thrilling and forbidden. When they finally pulled away, both breathless, she looked deep into his eyes, a mix of uncertainty and excitement reflected in her gaze. "What now?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "Now," he replied, a confident smile forming on his lips, "we take this one step at a time." They shared another smile, a silent understanding passing between them as they ventured into uncharted territory together, ready to explore the depths of their connection and the possibilities that lay ahead. As the days turned into weeks, their relationship deepened, each stolen moment adding to the tension that hung in the air. They would share brief touches, lingering glances, and whispers that sent shivers down their spines. Every interaction felt charged with electricity, the air thick with unspoken desires. One afternoon, while she was tidying up the living room, he walked in, a playful smile on his face. "What are you up to?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Just trying to make this place a bit more presentable," she replied, glancing up at him. "It's a never-ending task." He stepped closer, picking up a stray pillow and tossing it playfully at her. "You know, you could use a break. How about we watch a movie together?" She felt a flutter of excitement at the suggestion. "I suppose I could use a little distraction," she said with a smile. They settled onto the couch, the dim light from the television flickering across their faces. The movie played, but their attention was hardly on the screen. Instead, they stole glances at each other, their hands inching closer until their fingers finally intertwined. As the plot thickened on screen, she turned to him, her heart racing. "Do you think this is a good idea?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" He replied, his brow furrowing slightly. "This," she said, gesturing between them, "feels so right, but it also feels dangerous." He nodded, his expression serious. "I know what you mean. But I can't help how I feel about you." Before she could respond, he leaned in closer, their lips brushing together once again. This time the kiss was deeper, more passionate, as if they were both finally acknowledging the truth of their feelings. The moment was intoxicating, the world outside fading away as they lost themselves in each other. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, the thrill of their connection igniting a fire within her. Suddenly, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered their bubble. Panic surged through her as she pulled away, her heart racing. "What if someone sees us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Then we'll deal with it," he replied, his gaze steady and reassuring. "But I don't want to hide this anymore." With that, he pulled her back in, their lips crashing together with an urgency that spoke of their shared desires. The kiss deepened, his hands tangling in her hair as she melted into him, her worries dissipating for a moment. As they broke apart, both breathless, she felt a thrill of exhilaration course through her. "I don't want to hide either," she admitted, her heart pounding. He smiled, a mix of relief and joy lighting up his face. "Then let's make this real," he said softly. The door opened, and they quickly disentangled themselves, leaning back casually against the couch. Her husband walked in, oblivious to the moment that had just transpired. "Hey, what are you two up to?" he asked, glancing at the screen. "Just watching a movie," she replied, forcing a smile. "How was your day?" He shrugged, plopping down in an armchair. "Nothing too exciting. Just the usual grind." As they made small talk, her heart raced, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through her veins. She exchanged furtive glances with her stepson, the thrill of their secret connection simmering just beneath the surface. After a while, her husband excused himself, and as soon as the door closed, she turned to her stepson, her eyes wide with a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, a smile breaking across her face. "He has no idea." He chuckled, the tension easing between them as they shared a knowing look. "It feels kind of thrilling, doesn't it?" "Definitely," she replied, leaning in closer. "But we really have to be careful. We can't let him suspect anything." "Of course," he said, his tone serious but his eyes twinkling with mischief. "But we can still enjoy our time together, right?" With a playful glint in his eye, he reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. They spent the next hour talking softly, sharing secrets and laughter. Each touch ignited sparks between them, reminding her just how much she craved this connection. Do you ever wonder what it would be like if we could be open about this? He asked, his voice low. Sometimes, she admitted, biting her lip. But I don't know how that would work. There's so much at stake. He leaned in closer, their faces inches apart. What if we took it one step at a time? Just see where this goes. The idea sent a thrill of excitement through her. You really think so? I do, he said, his gaze steady. I think we owe it to ourselves to explore this. In that moment, a wave of determination washed over her. "'Kay then. Let's see where this takes us," she agreed, her heart racing at the thought. They shared a quick, sweet kiss before pulling back, laughter bubbling up between them. "I guess we need to make the most of our time together," he said, his eyes shining with mischief. As the weeks went by, they found ways to steal moments together whenever they could. They would sneak glances at each other during family dinners, brush against one another while cooking, and share secretive smiles that only they understood. One afternoon, while her husband was out running errands, she invited her stepson over to help with some chores around the house. "I could really use an extra set of hands," she said, her heart racing at the thought of being alone with him. "Of course. I'm always happy to help," he replied, a grin spreading across his face. They worked side by side, laughter filling the air as they tackled the tasks at hand. The chemistry between them crackled with every touch, every brush of their arms. As they moved into the living room to dust the shelves, she noticed how close he was standing, the heat radiating off his body. "You really do know how to make cleaning fun," she teased, trying to keep the mood light. "I aim to please," he replied with a cheeky smile, his eyes sparkling. Just then, their hands brushed against each other as they both reached for the same object on the shelf. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her, and she looked up into his eyes, both of them momentarily frozen in the moment. "What if we," he began, but she cut him off, glancing towards the door nervously. "We can't," she said quickly, though her heart raced at the thought of crossing that line. He took a step closer, his gaze intense. "But what if we want to?" The way he looked at her made her heart race. "I do want to," she confessed, her breath hitching in her throat. "But what about your dad?" "He doesn't have to know," he said, his voice low and steady. "We can be discreet." "I don't know," she said, her heart pounding with conflicting emotions. "What if he finds out?" "Then we'll figure it out together," he insisted, stepping closer until their bodies were nearly touching. She could feel the heat radiating off him, the tension between them building to an almost unbearable degree. The room felt smaller, their breaths mingling in the charged air. Finally, giving in to her desire, she closed the gap, their lips meeting in a fervent kiss. It was different this time, filled with urgency and passion, a culmination of all the moments they had shared leading up to this. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer as she melted into him, the world outside fading away. She felt alive, every nerve ending tingling with anticipation. But just as the kiss deepened, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered the moment. Panic surged through her, and she pulled away, her eyes wide. "What if he comes in?" "Then we'll act normal," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We can handle this." They quickly stepped back from each other, hearts racing as the front door swung open. Her husband called out from the hallway, and she forced a smile onto her face, trying to act casual. "Hey, how was your errand?" she asked, her heart pounding as she caught her stepson's eye. A silent communication passing between them. "Not too bad. Just picked up a few things," he replied, stepping into the living room. "What are you two up to?" "Just tidying up," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Nothing too exciting." "Cool," he said, oblivious to the tension that had just filled the room. He began unloading the bags he had brought home, while she and her stepson exchanged furtive glances, the thrill of their secret hanging heavy in the air. After dinner that evening, her husband settled in front of the television while she and her stepson retreated to the kitchen, ostensibly to clean up. "I can't believe we almost got caught," she whispered, her heart still racing. He chuckled softly, leaning against the counter. "It just makes it all the more exciting, doesn't it?" She looked at him, a smile creeping onto her face. "You're right. It does. Maybe we should find another way to spend our time together," he suggested, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Like what?" she asked, intrigued. "Maybe we could take a drive out to the lake tomorrow," he proposed, Just the two of us. It'll be nice to get away for a bit. Her heart raced at the thought. That sounds perfect, she said, excitement bubbling up inside her. Just promise we'll be careful. Always, he replied, stepping closer to her. I'll take care of everything. The next day they set off for the lake, the sun shining brightly overhead as they drove along the winding roads. The air was filled with the scent of pine and wildflowers, and the promise of adventure hung between them. When they arrived, the beauty of the lake took her breath away. The water sparkled under the sun, and the peaceful surroundings enveloped them in serenity. Wow, it's beautiful here, she said, stepping out of the car. Just wait until you see it up close, he said with a grin, leading her toward the water's edge. They walked along the shore, their feet sinking into the warm sand. As they found a secluded spot, she felt a rush of exhilaration at being away from prying eyes. Let's sit for a moment, he suggested, plopping down on the soft grass. She joined him and they both took a deep breath, reveling in the tranquility around them. This is nice, she said, leaning back on her hands and closing her eyes. Really nice, he agreed, his voice low. I'm glad we did this. She opened her eyes and turned to him, the intensity of his gaze sending a shiver down her spine. Me too, she said softly. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the lake, he leaned in closer, his heart racing with anticipation. Can I kiss you again? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her breath caught in her throat, but she nodded, her heart pounding. Yes. He closed the distance between them, their lips meeting in a slow, heated kiss. It felt as if time had stopped, and all that existed was the two of them and the overwhelming connection they shared. When they finally pulled away, both breathless and flushed, she smiled at him. We should do this more often. I'd like that, he said, his eyes sparkling with affection. As darkness began to blanket the sky, they stayed at the lake, sharing secrets and dreams under the stars. With each moment spent together, their bond deepened, weaving a tapestry of emotions that felt both thrilling and dangerous. But as the night grew late, reality began to creep back in, reminding them of the lives they had to return to. We should head back, she said reluctantly, glancing at the sky. Yeah, I guess we should, he replied, a hint of disappointment in his voice. They packed up their things, but as they walked back to the car, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. No matter what happens, I don't want to lose this, he said, his gaze earnest. Neither do I, she promised, squeezing his hand. Their hearts filled with it together. As they pulled into the driveway, her heart raced at the thought of returning to their everyday lives. Just act normal, she reminded him as they stepped out of the car. Right, he said, giving her a reassuring smile. Normal. Inside the house, they found her husband watching TV. They exchanged casual greetings, trying their best to keep their composure. But the thrill of their secret lingered in the air, a delicious tension that only intensified the connection between them. Later that evening, after her husband had gone to bed, she found herself unable to shake the electric thrill that coursed through her veins. She moved quietly through the house, her heart racing as she approached her stepson's room. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly on his door. Can I come in? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Yeah, of course, he replied, his voice low and inviting. As she stepped inside, the dim light from a lamp cast a soft glow across the room. He sat on the edge of his bed, an eager look in his eyes that sent a rush of warmth through her. I couldn't stop thinking about today, she confessed, closing the door behind her. Me neither, he said, a grin spreading across his face. Felt amazing to be together like that. She stepped closer, her heart pounding in her chest. What if someone finds out? She asked, though the thrill of the thought only heightened her anticipation. Then we'll deal with it, he said, his gaze steady and resolute. I just can't keep pretending that I don't want you. The confession sent a shiver down her spine. I feel the same way, she admitted, stepping even closer until they were almost touching. In an instant he closed the gap, capturing her lips with his inner heated kiss. It was filled with urgency and passion, a culmination of all their stolen moments and unspoken desires. She melted against him, her hands tangling in his hair as he deepened the kiss, their bodies pressing together. As they kissed, the world around them faded away, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of warmth and intimacy. She could feel the heat radiating off him, igniting every nerve ending in her body. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and flushed, she looked into his eyes, her heart racing. That was incredible. He smiled, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I've been waiting to do that. Me too, she confessed, biting her lip as she felt a rush of desire course through her. I didn't know if we could actually go through with it. Neither did I, he admitted, his fingers brushing against her cheek. But it feels too right to ignore. With a mix of excitement and longing, she leaned in again, capturing his lips in another heated kiss. Their bodies pressed together, and she could feel the heat radiating off him as he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, igniting a fire within her that she hadn't felt in years. She felt alive, each kiss sending sparks of electricity coursing through her veins. They lost themselves in each other, their kisses growing more passionate and desperate as they explored the depths of their desire. As they pulled away, her heart raced at the reality of what they were doing. We can't let anyone catch us, she whispered, her breath coming in short gasps. We won't, he promised, his eyes filled with determination. But I want to explore this to see where it leads. She nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Okay, she said softly. But we have to be careful. Always, he replied, a playful smile on his lips. We can take our time. As they settled onto the bed, she felt a rush of warmth and anticipation. He leaned in again, their lips meeting in another soft kiss. This time it was tender, filled with unspoken promises and emotions that ran deep. With each kiss they began to explore each other more. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer as she responded by tangling her fingers in his hair. The kiss deepened, growing more passionate as they lost themselves in the moment. Do you realize how long I've wanted this? He murmured against her lips, his breath warm and enticing. Longer than I can admit, she confessed, her heart racing at the truth of their connection. He leaned in again, their lips brushing together softly before he kissed her deeply once more. She could feel the heat building between them, a delicious tension that ignited every nerve ending in her body. As their kisses grew more fervent, he gently pushed her back onto the bed, his body hovering above hers. She gasped softly, feeling a rush of exhilaration at the intimacy of the moment. Are you sure about this? He asked, his eyes searching hers for confirmation. I am, she whispered, her heart racing with anticipation. I want you. With that he leaned down, capturing her lips once more in a heated kiss. The world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them in their bubble of desire and passion. He kissed a trail down her neck, sending shivers of pleasure coursing through her. You're so beautiful, he murmured, his lips brushing against her skin. Her heart raced at his words, igniting a fire within her. And you're so handsome, she replied, her voice filled with breathless desire. They continued to kiss, exploring each other's bodies with an urgency that felt both thrilling and overwhelming. As they tangled together, she could feel the heat radiating off him, and she reveled in the closeness of their bodies. Every kiss, every caress felt electric, awakening desires that had long lain dormant. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, the thrill of their connection igniting a fire within her. As the night wore on, they lost track of time, caught up in their own world of passion and intimacy. The kisses grew deeper, their bodies moving together in a dance of desire that felt both exhilarating and forbidden. Finally, as they lay tangled together, both breathless and flushed, she turned to him, a smile spreading across her face. That was everything I imagined and more. He chuckled softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm glad. I've never felt anything like this before. Neither have I, she admitted, her heart racing at the reality of what they had just shared. But we really have to be careful now. Trust me, I will always be careful, he promised, his gaze earnest. I don't want to lose this. Neither did she. They shared a lingering kiss, a silent promise passing between them that they would navigate this newfound connection together, no matter the challenges they faced. As the night deepened around them, they held each other close, savoring the warmth and intimacy of the moment. The future felt uncertain, but in that moment, all that mattered was the bond they had forged and the love that had blossomed between them. Days turned into weeks, and their secret relationship blossomed. Each stolen moment felt charged with excitement and urgency. They would find ways to sneak away from family gatherings, stealing kisses in quiet corners or lingering touches when no one was watching. One afternoon, her husband had gone out to run errands, leaving them home alone. The moment the door clicked shut, excitement coursed through her. "Finally, some time to ourselves," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Let's make the most of it," he replied, his gaze intense as he stepped closer. Without a word, they moved to the living room, their hearts racing as they settled onto the couch together. She leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. "Do you think we can ever be open about this?" he asked, his voice low. "I hope so," she admitted, her heart filled with both hope and fear. "But we have to be careful. I don't want to hurt anyone." "I know," he said softly, "but I can't help how I feel." She looked up at him, her heart racing. "I feel the same way." With that, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a passionate kiss. The kiss deepened, filled with longing and desire as they lost themselves in each other once more. Their hands began to wander, exploring each other's bodies as the kiss grew more fervent. She felt alive, every nerve ending tingling with excitement. "Let's take our time," he murmured between kisses, his breath warm against her skin. She nodded, her heart racing at the thought. "I want to feel every moment with you." They continued to kiss, the world around them fading away as they lost themselves in the connection they shared. Each kiss, each touch felt electric, awakening desires that had long lain dormant. As they pulled apart, breathless and flushed, he looked deep into her eyes. "This is everything I've ever wanted." "Me too," she whispered, feeling a rush of warmth flood through her. In that moment, they knew they had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But instead of fear, there was excitement, a thrilling sense of adventure that lay ahead. They leaned in again, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss, the promise of their love and connection hanging in the air. As the sun began to set outside, casting a warm glow around them, they savored the sweetness of their love, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. Weeks passed and they grew more confident in their connection. They began to embrace their secret moments, finding new ways to express their love and desire for each other. One evening, while her husband was away for the night, she invited her stepson over to watch a movie. The anticipation hung in the air as they settled onto the couch, their bodies close together. "Do you think he'll be gone long?" he asked, his voice low and filled with excitement. "Long enough for us to enjoy ourselves," she replied, her heart racing at the thrill of being alone together. As the movie played in the background, their bodies were inches apart, the tension between them palpable. She could feel the heat radiating from him, and the desire in his eyes made her heart race. "Should we make this a little more interesting?" he suggested with a playful smirk, leaning closer. "What do you have in mind?" she asked, feigning innocence while excitement bubbled inside her. "Let's skip the movie," he replied, his voice low and inviting. "I'd rather focus on us." With that, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a heated kiss that sent a thrill coursing through her. She melted against him, the kiss deepening as they lost themselves in each other. As they kissed, the world outside faded away. Their hands roamed freely, exploring each other with a mix of urgency and tenderness. She could feel every touch igniting a fire within her, awakening desires that had been building for weeks. Breaking the kiss, he looked into her eyes, a mixture of desire and affection dancing in his gaze. "You're incredible," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You make me feel alive," she replied, her heart racing as she leaned in for another kiss. The kisses grew more passionate. She felt a rush of exhilaration. They tumbled back onto the couch, laughter mixing with their kisses as they pulled each other closer. "Do you realize how perfect this is?" he murmured against her lips. "I do," she whispered, her heart swelling with affection. "And I never want it to end." With a determined look, he captured her lips again, their bodies entwined as they explored the depths of their passion. Each kiss was a promise, a testament to the connection they shared. And with each touch they built a world of their own. The movie played on, forgotten in the background, as they immersed themselves in their moment. They shared sweet kisses and playful banter, losing track of time as their hearts intertwined. Eventually they pulled apart, breathless and smiling, basking in the warmth of their connection. "I think we should make this a regular thing," he said, his voice teasing. "Absolutely," she replied, her heart racing at the thought. "But we need to be careful." He nodded, his expression serious. "I promise to always be careful."